Mark Hansen was from Newport, Kentucky, and he joined with two of his friends for a hike on Appalachian Trail in March 7, 1975. The boys wanted to test their stamina through a hike in a bad weather and challenging trail of the park. The three friends didn't know the extent of the bad weather that was hitting the park upon their arrival. A tornado hit the area earlier in the morning, and this was just the beginning of what was about to happen. The guys started their hike from a big creek in the park around 11 a.m. They planned to hike towards the west area of the park and spend the night in Tri-Corner Shelter. The first day of hiking wasn't going to be easy. It was an uphill walk of almost 16 miles through the extreme wind, rain, and eventually snow flurries. As they started hiking, John, one of Mark's friends, complained that he was getting wet and cold and didn't think he could or wanted to continue. So he told his friends he's going back to the car. The other two friends continued their hike, and after 1 mile, they reached the shelter and possible life-saving warmth at Cosby Knob. Mark and his friend Fish continued their hike, with Fish doing the better of the two. He seemed to be handle the bad weather and pack much better than Mark. As they continued their hike, Mark yelled to Fish that he was dropping his backpack and leaving it on the trail. He believed he couldn't make it carrying the weight. Fish was shocked by Mark's decision, but stayed calm and tried to convince Mark that he needed the pack, as that could be a life-saving decision. Mark responded by saying they can make it to Tri-Corner and they'll find warmth and shelter there. So Mark dropped the pack and they continued their hike. At around 7 p.m. the weather got much worse. Now the wind was blowing crazy and the temperature was dropping. Fish was still leading the hike and encouraging Mark to keep up. At around 8:30 p.m. in total darkness and with the snow falling hard, Mark yelled to Fish that he was quitting. He laid down in the middle of the trail and appeared to pass out. Fish tried to encourage Mark to get up and keep moving, but he refused or couldn't respond. Fish got back up and continued by himself for another 200 yards and finally decided that he can't go any farther and laid down in his sleeping bag. What Fish didn't know was he was 200 yards away from the protection of the shelter at Tri-Corner. During the night, Fish either heard or had a dream that he heard Mark is calling for help. Fish was so tired that he couldn't be sure if Mark yelling for help was a dream or reality. At 7 a.m. the following morning, Fish woke up and immediately started to look for his friend Mark, but he couldn't be found. There was several inches of snow on the ground and tracks couldn't be seen. He continued until he reached Tri-Corner, where he was able to meet other hikers that could assist him to find Mark. Late in the afternoon, Fish contacted National Park Service personnel and officially reported Mark Hansen missing. They found Mark's backpack exactly where he left it in the middle of the trail. Nothing was disturbed or removed from the backpack. Searchers combed the area with Fish, but Mark couldn't be found. On March 12th, 5 days after Mark was missing, the number of searchers increased significantly, and one of the searchers found a cave that appeared to have a large animal living in it, and he found several bones on the floor of the cave, but nothing else. The search continued, and by March 14th there was a huge rain in the area that washed away all the snow that was on the ground earlier. The search was consisted of helicopters, dogs, and ground teams. At 2 p.m. on March 17th, 10 days after Mark was missing, searchers found Mark's body. His body was found 2 miles away from the trail. He was leaning against a tree with his pants open and his gloves and boots lying nearby. An autopsy concluded that Mark died 24 to 36 hours after Fish last saw him. It's worth noting that Fish last saw Mark laying on a very well-known trail which was very hard to miss even in darkness. There is no way Mark didn't know he left the trail and walking towards oblivion. He and Fish knew the route to Tri-Corner and it wasn't downhill, which was the route that Mark took. Another question that comes to mind is how Mark was able to hike 3 miles in the middle of the night in rough bushes when he just passed out on the trail out of exhaustion. These are the questions that we're never going to get answers for. The city Hanover is surrounded by several large and small bodies of water with significant open spaces. About 3 miles northeast of Hanover, there is the Pigeon Mountains. The Mark Line farm was located exactly between the heel of the Pigeon Mountains and Hanover City. On October 26, 1929, Mrs. Mark Line needed to go to Hanover for business reasons and decided to put her oldest son Luther in charge of the children when she was gone. After the mom was gone, Luther took the children to the yard and they started to collect leaves for the barn. After some time, Luther put his sister, the 2-year-old Geraldine, in a sitting position in the backyard under a large tree and told her to stay put while he ran to the house to get food. After a very short period of time, Luther returned and found Geraldine was missing. The children and Luther looked for their sister but couldn't find her. After the mother returned back, the kids told her Geraldine was missing and she informed the authorities. There were dozens of people started to search for the girl on the first day, but nothing was found. Searchers started to get worried since the Mark Line house was close to the thick bushes of the Pigeon Mountains. Searchers started the second day with the help of police, wondering how far a 2-year-old girl could go without being detected. Thousands of searchers came to help, but nothing was found, not even a single trace. Reminding you, the 2-year-old child couldn't run and could barely walk. On October 28, 2 days after the girl went missing, searchers found the girl in the elevation of Pigeon Mountains. The girl was missing her coat, hat, 1 set of leggings and 1 shoe. None of the clothes were ever found. The girl had some scratching over her body but was in a very good condition, knowing she spent the last 2 days in the woods. Geraldine was unable to explain what happened to her and where she was during the search. The Chenoweth family owned a farm on the outskirts of Breeds, 8 miles east of Canton, Illinois. In the evening of March 28, 1940, the 3-year-old Helen was playing at the farm with her 17-year-old cousin and her 5-year-old brother. At some point, Helen disappeared and the family notified the authorities and the search started. The police was questioning the 17-year-old cousin with the name of William and took him into custody for further investigation. While William was in custody, the police kept searching the area up to 2 miles from the farm. The night that the girl disappeared, there was a rainstorm which lasted for several hours and destroyed any tracks that the little girl might have made. 47 hours after the girl disappeared, Deputy Floyd Morse was climbing an uphill trail 1 mile from the Chenoweth farm. As he was walking the trail, which included pig lot and mud, he saw a bulge in the middle of the mud, but the bulge appeared to have clean clothing. The deputy walked to the bulge and found Helen unconscious but alive. Interestingly, the girl had clean clothes, hands and feet. Her clothes was barely wrinkled. Even weirder, Helen's clothes was dry. The deputy took the girl to the hospital. The area that she was found was searched multiple times before, but she wasn't there at those times. Deputy Floyd Morse later stated that although the child was unharmed, but he believed she had been held captive by someone who decided to release her because of the fear of being detected. How Helen's clothes were clean and dry while there was a heavy rain the night before she was found remains a question. Helen never said anything about her disappearance due to her being 2 years old. Her cousin got released later on since everybody believed he didn't have anything to do with Helen's disappearance. This is another case which the missing person was found in a place that was searched multiple times before.